Hi, and welcome to this conversation series with me, Prune Harris. With me here today is friend, herbalist, amazing practitioner, Sara Weyland. And we're going to be having a conversation today around the concept of being or going into the mystic. And especially by that, I mean when the soul is traveling. I'm really excited. I think we're going to have a great discussion. And Sara, thank you so much for being here and being part of this.
Yeah, thanks, Prune. Thanks for the privilege of being able to talk about something that is so unique and something that I think we don't often get to talk about in our everyday life. And I thought maybe we could start with a quote from Albert Einstein that's been really meaningful to me in the last several years. And it reads, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious." And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation where we get to explore and kind of go into these more mystical areas of what is part of our human experience. So to begin with, I was thinking that maybe we can start with what prompted this conversation, which was your recent experience with coronavirus and some of the more mystical aspects of your experience. And so I thought maybe give you an opportunity to share anything that you want to about that part of your experience, and then we can kind of see where this organically takes us.
Yeah, thanks, Sara. Yeah, in the first of our conversations, we really explored the concept of illness as initiator, illness as transformation. And of course, part of that is, the biggest part of that actually is not initiation or transformation on a physical level. It's those much deeper levels. And we touched on them, of course, in that conversation. But I think in this conversation, we get the chance to look at some of the ways that the soul energy really informs, I was about to say so much of our life, but that's not even accurate. Everything about our life, everything about our interaction with the world. Energetically, there's amazing structures of that deepest energy, and maybe we'll get to that later. When I was, let's say, traveling down that journey of coronavirus, especially the first few days, then it felt like that place of core energy, soul energy, was expanding. When we think about, actually, I'm going to look at the energetic structure first, because then I can use that language as we keep chatting about it. When we think of the deepest part of your energy system, that amazing essence of your energy and of you, my essence deep inside my energetic core, everybody's essence deep inside their energetic core, then that amazing core energy emanates through every other part of your physicality, your cognitional or emotional bodies, of your physical body. So this amazing movement from the core out through all that you are. One of my teachers, Kathleen Matthews, an amazing woman, talks of how the body is marinated in the soul. And my goodness, I love that quote. That when she first said it, that really gave this most beautiful image of the soul energy continually emanating from that core place. But it's not like it sort of just floats around inside you. We've lost the language of the energy of our soul in so many ways, for all kinds of reasons. But it's not, I remember, when I first started working, even talking about the soul was still really the domain of religions rather than spirituality or physicality or everyday life. And yet it comes through, doesn't it? When we think about things, something being beautiful and soulful, we talk about it, we have this kind of vague language for it, something touched you deep into your soul. And often when we talk about the energy of the heart, what we're talking about energetically is that soul energy being expressed through the heart. So I really want to kind of bring more understandings to the way that this amazing core energy, essential energy, soul energy, emanates through the body, especially through the heart system. And yet it's fixed really strongly because there's an energy center beneath your feet and above your head. So that energetic core moves through the center of your body, really wrapping the spine, wrapping the amazing cerebral spinal fluid. That has maybe we'll talk about that at another time, but it has such a magical energy, that cerebral spinal fluid. Kind of looks like liquid stardust, if you can give me that analogy. Sparkly, filled with potential, filled with information, traveling through the body, feeding every nerve in the body system. Wow. I hope that gives an image of kind of being literally hardwired with this magnificent beauty that isn't just of us as individuals. The energy center beneath your feet, that earth star aligned with all of the chakras, yeah, aligned with the energetic core, that energy beneath our feet pulls in energy. Energy is information, always, 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 yeah. So it brings in information, brings in energy from below the feet into the body. The sun star above the head brings in energy and therefore information through the energetic core simultaneously at all times. So when I look at that essential energy in a human being, yes, it's totally unique. It's amazingly magnificent in its uniqueness of the individual. And running through it is this cosmic, let's call it everything above, cosmic and earth energy. So we can never be non-connected. We're always in relationship with the earth as part of the cosmos. So that's kind of the start point. And when we go through anything physical, such as that experience with coronavirus that I went through, the energetic core, the soul energy, is also going through it. Yeah. There's nothing that anyone can experience that's just physical. Everything involves, let's call it mind, body, spirit, or the soul energy, the physical body, and the whole energetic system. We come as a complete package. There is no way to separate any one of those things at any time, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Because so often we do separate them. We pop them into these little packages of our brain or potentially our mind. For me, mind is far more than brain. It's the subconscious wisdom of every part of your energy system, every part of your being. So intuition fits in there as that concept of mind. Gut feelings are mind. Thoughts are mind. Tensions in the body or communications from the body are mind. So we tend, for the sake of ease, for the sake of language, for the sake of communication and explaining to each other, we find it easier to separate all of these compartments and components of ourselves. But of course, the truth is anything but that. We are an amazingly complex and communicative series of, well, magnificence. So coming back to your actual question, when I think of those first few days of having coronavirus and beginning to get very ill with it, yeah, so temperature over 40 degrees and really beginning to find the way of the body collapse. Anyone that's walking along that path, their soul energy actually does one of two things. One is that as the physicality constricts or gets really compromised, then the soul energy tightens. That energetic core actually moves quite considerably in its size and its flow. If someone is in reasonable health and reasonable happiness, then that energetic core is going to be sort of the size that I'm showing you here on my body. It really almost like a little bit narrower than the width of your neck. Yeah. But when someone is really being pushed into, it's not even into their edge places, but when there is huge physical compromise and demise, then everything begins to constrict and contract. And it's not to say that it's going in more. It's like a tensility comes into that energetic core. And instead of this sort of fluidity, it comes into stronger and stronger tightness. Does that image make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I'm wondering, I'm sure you're going to get there, but I'm wondering if from your perspective, is there, obviously there's a purpose for that, but what might be the reason for that?
Yeah, there's absolutely a purpose to it, because it gets into this tautness, into this incredible, it looks longer. It's exactly the same size, but it looks longer because it's moved in tighter, but also the energy from the earth and the cosmos gets more streamlined. And that's why it kind of moves in. It's like for some of that time, that cosmic and earth energy is more in your system than usual to really help bring in more information, more support, to help that alignment come deeper. Remember what we talked about, how I believe that whenever we're ill, it's to invite transformation, and transformation occurs most easily when we're aligned to the needs of our soul. So when this kind of tightening comes in, stretching, lengthening, it's because we're actually connecting up far higher through the sun star and far deeper through the earth star. And I've actually seen it when sometimes it's one or the other, that we're either really, the energetic core is constricting, but my goodness, we've gone down really, really deep into that earth star energy. And that's a place where we often, we come out of that illness or that experience reconfigured in our ability to have relationships with other things and people, because suddenly we really are part of the earth in a different way. We know things in a different way. We have that deeper sense of belonging to the human race, to our families, to our communities. It's like a deeper bowl that we're walking within at that time. And I've seen it that actually, and I would say this is a bit more common, that when that energetic core really comes into that immense, and I want to say that actually when that happens, that energetic core becomes a really strong, bright silver. It's the most amazing color, because you're connected into a much more different energy than you usually carry in your own individual field. So when that tightens, often it's because the sun star above your head is really connecting into great information above our human consciousness. So it's into that supra consciousness. It's connecting with those other realms of being, awareness and consciousness. And when that happens, then that often comes in that amazing silver way. So shall I actually answer your question, or is there questions that have arisen about that?
Well, I mean, there's so much richness in that. I love having the visual. I mean, that's something that I so appreciate about what you share so generously with the rest of us. For me, it's really helpful to have a visual, and also I actually was feeling a little bit emotional about how beautiful that is, that when we're going through these times where you might actually be feeling pretty poor, in yourself, when you're feeling pretty rough, it's a really beautiful thing to know that there are forces happening that are supporting you in all these ways that maybe we hadn't realized, and maybe even preparing us to be able to interact, like you said, with the earth, with other humans, with other beings in different ways. So that's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I always perceive that everything about an individual's energy system is in service to them becoming. Yeah, everything, every experience, every interpretation, every perception, every way of knowing or being is in service to the evolution of you, of how actually you evolve more and more, how you become more and more you. And that's a really massive foundation of my life. And I think I have the incredible luxury in many ways of seeing energy. And so then it's like a lot of the either the mystery or the unknown or the things that we just don't understand are happening within us. I've had the privilege to see that and watch that for nearly 50 years now. So it's actually the language of energy makes things beautifully clear when you can interpret it. And that's one of the massive joys. So understanding that your energy system is always in service to you becoming more you. For me, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, me too. So Prune, I wondered if returning back to the first question, which was about what kinds of insights or things did you experience or glean from your experience, when we're thinking about some of the more mystical aspects of that experience, but then also maybe we can bring in some other examples.
Yeah, definitely. I remember the first time I was really aware of the ability of the soul to travel outside the body. I was standing on a street in Dublin. There was a busker in front of a window, a big shop front window. The window was quite dark and the busker was playing some awesome music. And so I was standing listening to the busker, and there were people passing between the shop front and the busker, between me and the busker, being reflected in the shop front. So there was this amazing kind of loosening of vision, all of these different layers of movement and reflection and the music itself, and of course the energy in Ireland. And as I was standing there, I moved out of my body, and it was as simple as kind of think of walking up a stairs. Yeah, your legs move and you go up the next stair and up the next stair. It wasn't anything jolting. It was just like, oh, I'm moving up out of my body, and I moved straight up, and I looked down, very aware of what was happening. No shock, no surprise, no nothing, just looking down. And I could see myself underneath me. I could see the busker. I could see the friend I was with. And that place of real full processing of understanding, this is the non-physical part of me, and it's moving independently from the physical. And actually at that point, the friend I was with, who'd noticed I'd gone quite pale and wasn't moving, touched me on the shoulder, and wow, I came back. That was a bit shocking, coming back so quickly, having that soul body return to the physical in such a kind of jolting way. But that was the first time I had been really deeply aware of that happening, even though for most of my young life, I was continually in and out of the physical body. So I want to say that first that actually for me, moving with the energy of the soul body is quite a normal way. And actually what maybe we'll come to soon is that it's a really normal way for all of us. We do it in our dreams, in our sleep, all the time. But during those first few days of coronavirus, very ill, high temperature, I was very aware that as the body was moving more and more into big compromise, then the movement through the soul body out of the physical was stronger. And at some point, it became to the place where I really lost all consciousness of myself as an individual. And it's an interesting place, isn't it? Because when I was in the hospital, if the doctors came in or a nurse came in, I could talk to them. But it was like everything had moved into my eyes seeing just the energy, which is a I don't know the word for it. It's absolutely amazing, phenomenal, beautiful experience when it's almost, imagine seeing through your normal daily eyes and then putting on a night vision mask and seeing in a completely different way. You're still seeing the same things, aren't you? But now you kind of, the lens through which you are perceiving them has changed everything into different form. And so that was how it was in the hospital. And as the people would move in, then seeing that part of their form rather than physical form, hearing their voices and hearing them, seeing the sound of the voice. So the energy of sound, of course, has immense, is only vibration. So thinking of one doctor now, he had a very deep voice, and that came out as amazing purples and reds. So as he would be talking, and I'm sure I was looking at him through, you know, he would have seen me looking at him, but actually what I was watching was the colors of what he was saying, to understand what he was saying. It sounds even odd to myself as I say this to you, Sarah, but you know, when things switch out of the physical, then of course we perceive through the non-physical. So everything becomes, when I talk to my husband like this, he laughs and says it's kind of like Neo in the Matrix.
Yes, I thought the same. I was thinking this sounds a lot like the Matrix.
And this is where my kids say, "Oh, Mom, you're such a freak." But you know, this is my language. This is the way I see the world. And when I'm really grounded in my human form, and thankfully I'm often a very grounded person, then all of that can happen as well as the deep physicality. But in this situation of being so poorly, then actually I wasn't operating on a particularly physical level. So as that progressed then, so as my body got sicker and sicker, then I really lost all awareness of even that separation of physical and soul. And now with hindsight and understanding the timeline, I can understand that I was in that place for 4 or 5 days. And I remember very, very clearly, oh my goodness, I remember that place with total wonder, because we traditionally call it the place of the void. Yeah, that's a word that has been used a lot. And yet, for me, that concept of void means nothingness. It means emptiness, means space. And my experience of being in that void or in that place was that it was immense, immense in its richness, immense in the fullness of its potential, immense in its sentience, in its totality. You know, I hear myself think words as I talk about it, words like bliss, divine, love. And yet when I examine the words, they can't hold the immensity of it, because I think words are held within the human realm, aren't they? And so when we say a word like love, we know what we mean by it. And this was ultimately more than human. Human was part of it in every way, but it was the totality, the richness. As I was, again, trying to explain this to my husband, he has a big affinity with bears. So I said to him, just imagine there was like a cosmic bear, biggest, most magnificent cosmic bear. And that bear put its arms around you. And as you were being held and supported by that bear, you actually sank in to become the bear, even as you were still you and the cosmos. And I think that's the best way that I can describe that place of immensity. And actually, as I think about it now, I don't think I can ever use that word, the void, again, without correcting it in my head as the immensity, this most sentient, massive place of oneness, of that place of being the potential, being the richness, being the cosmos as we can. There's something about creativity in it, though. Like when we think of the void, I don't think of that massive creativity. In that place of that immensity, there was such life, such creativity. Like thinking of it now, I can almost taste that creative energy, that creative principle, the fecundity of it, that was just so ripe and massive and immense in it. Yeah, really challenged here to use words that can describe this, because in so many ways it was totally beyond words. And
Prune, can I just ask, when we're talking about, like for you, the immensity, or I've definitely heard it called the void before. I'm just wondering, is it your understanding that is this a place that our souls come from and return to, or what is the relationship with our soul and this immensity?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question and quite a big one.
Yes.
I want to say one thing. I think obviously usually when we're in that place of the void or the immensity, often we're no longer alive. Yeah, although there's hundreds, thousands, probably more, of stories of people having had near-death experiences and being in that place, or even profound mystical experiences that really position them in that place for periods of time. So it was interesting to be in that place for so many days while still being alive, still having interactions with other people, because it meant that there were snippets of awareness that when I came back from that place, I could understand. Being in that immensity, I couldn't say that I was separate as a soul. Yeah, the way I've perceived that as I've thought about it is that my individual soul was very housed and placed within the world soul, yeah, or the cosmic soul. So there's one thing very clearly I remember from that as being slightly distinct from this totality, and that was the feeling of moving, of actually traveling or journeying in some way with lights around me. And one light in particular I recognized. Remember, people are vibrations, people are light vibrations. And so Sarah, if you asked me to describe your light vibration, I could do so. And if I was in a totally dark room and you came in and I could see your energy, then I would know it was you by your energy, yeah, because of your distinct light vibration. And I was aware that once I came back into the physical, I was aware, like, I was with a friend who had recently died. And I could recognize her vibration. She had an amazing, amazing, strong, strong light vibration, one of the most exquisite that I've ever been privileged to be with. And I realized that we'd been walking the words that come to mind when I revisited it was the pathway of souls. And of course, that's a very normal concept in many, many traditions, that when people die, there is a pathway of souls that actually carries those souls back from the individual, from the human, into that collective soul consciousness, or depending on cosmologies, it carries them into the land of the dead or heaven or wherever and whatever your cosmology is. And I was aware that I was walking along that path of the souls with this friend who had left her body maybe 2 weeks before this time. Wow, like, even as I connect into that now, I really feel the immense beauty of being on that path. And I can, as I go back in my memory of that and connect into that, recognizing that it wasn't just her and me walking, there was millions of these lights moving. So maybe that sort of answers some of that question that you asked around that process and movement from individual souls still totally connected into the earth and cosmos, and actually the final completion of that individual soul moving from the physical into, let's say, something else.
And I'm just wondering, when you're in that process, what's the relationship of your soul with your physical self when it sounds like that's a separate experience, maybe from the word that you used was when the soul goes traveling. I'm just wondering, we'll circle back to that because I sort of put a pin in that to learn more about how maybe we all naturally do this, and in my case anyway, mostly unaware that that's happening. But what I'm wondering is, when you have that level of an experience, I'm wondering what that is like for your physical body, and is there a cost to your physical body for maybe, you mentioned when you were in Dublin, something that stuck out in my mind was that your friend noticed the coloring of your physical body had changed. And so I'm thinking there must be a reason why in our waking hours, why we maybe want our soul to be really anchored into our physical body, or maybe not.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. We do. We totally do. Because remember I said how the body is marinated in the soul. Well, actually, the body the soul innovates the body. It actually, without the soul fully, the body dies. Yeah, that's the difference between life and death. The soul is gone. So it becomes down to like ratios or quantities almost. So obviously in that situation, when I or someone is so far away from the physical body, then that would indicate that the physical body is either incredibly compromised, close to death, or that person is being held by others in an incredibly strong and safe place in order for them to travel for information. So here I'm thinking more if you are working in in a beautiful ceremony, supporting someone very, very skilled at that level of astral or soul travel, move into the edge of superconsciousness for information for the community. Yeah, so those are the only two places. And again, I want to emphasize that would only be done in an incredibly skilled and a skilled space, a skilled circle, but also a skilled individual. Yeah, so that's not something like, hey, let's do that tomorrow. Because your soul just wouldn't know how to travel there. The pathways of that experience, some people are very gifted with that. Other people really aren't. Their gifts is to be solidly in the physical. So if we think about the soul energy enlivening the body energy, actually that although we have electromagnetic energy that's coming through every cell, holding those cells vibrant and strong, that actually the electromagnetic energy has within it subtle energy. And that subtle energy is this energy of core, of essence, of soul. And so when that soul energy moves in some way, then the physical energy will also do so. And the longer that soul energy is out, then the more that physical energy will be compromised. And, you know, we know this, if someone's been ill for a while, or maybe this will resonate with some people, not at all with others, but maybe you're someone who really daydreams a lot, or you know that your body and your energy, your soul, your essence are often almost beside each other. That you're not fully housing all of yourself. You know, that was something both in my shamanic practice and in my energy practice. I'd see sometimes that soul energy, especially if we've had a shock, yeah, any trauma, any shock, that soul energy would almost have a shadow of itself beside the individual. So someone would walk in the room and there they are in all of their beauty, all of their magnificence, and there'd be this energy beside them that was theirs as well. And we understood that our job for the full healing was enabled to bring that essential energy back in. So yes, at all times, we want to be housing the fullness of ourselves, and our physicality is the house for it. In that instance, when the friend noticed that I'd gone still and more pale, it was because I was no longer being enervated by the fullness of that soul energy, because whether we know it or not, we see energy all the time, every single one of us. We know when that person is kind of brimming with fullness or life or vitality, and we know when they're not, when actually something's moved away. I remember my mum, for a while she asked, and then she gave up asking, but we'd be in the car and I'd be communicating on all kinds of different levels. My body was here, but I really wouldn't be thinking in any way. I wouldn't be present in any way. You can't be present while you're also traveling, because presence is from that soul level. So I remember she would turn to me and say, like, what are you thinking about? And it would be such a journey to come back into my awareness, to then look at her and say, oh, nothing. Yeah, little simple memory of that sort of place. She could tell by my absence that she interpreted deep in thought, because that's another place. But actually, for so many people, when we think, we're thinking, we're communicating slightly outside ourselves. We're working on different levels and layers of communication.
Yeah. So Prune, you mentioned you can think about this perhaps in the sense of like quantity or percentage maybe. Yeah. So for instance, you mentioned some people that you had worked with where you could see that some of their soul essence energy wasn't being fully housed in their physical body. And so it sounds to me like we can learn habits or have experiences in our life perhaps, or maybe even cultivate some of these abilities to be able to still have this physical existence and still be able to move through our life, but yet maybe have some aspect of this journeying of our soul, maybe communicating on these different levels. And I'm just wondering if, I'm curious about that a little bit more. Like, is this something that could be cultivated or should be? Or it sounds to me like something, if we become more conscious of it, then we can work with it in ways that are maybe more life promoting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that word, Sarah, life promoting. If we think about that place of fullness, of being able to experience all of who you are, then fully housing that essential energy is essential. So totally. And it's amazing how our daily life can just jolt aspects of that core energy, that essential energy, so that, you know, maybe you're stepping out to cross a road and you hadn't seen a car or a bus, and they beep their horn to warn you, and you feel that big shock inside yourself. Something like that. And yet you come back, you're totally fine. You managed to step on the pavement, they avoided you, all good. Something like that can really kind of, it pushes the soul energy, just a tiny amount of it, outside the body. Yeah. Normally, in good situations, our magnificent core energy will always call back remnants of itself that has been sort of left in places or left with people. Very, very common. Maybe you have a friend who is really going through a hard time, and you've sat with them, and my goodness, your heart has broken for them. And when that happens, that can leave a kind of a soul essence outside your own physicality, because it moved so much to be there to support the soul of your friend. It's not like that soul stays with that person, but it's moved outside of its center because of the bigness of your feeling, your emotion, your big loving heart and loving soul. So in many, many ways, that soul essence can shift from its central place. But usually, and especially when we sleep, it's one of the things that really restores when we sleep, or when we meditate, or when we go for walks and we feel centered and balanced and rejuvenated afterwards. That's because little parts of ourselves have kind of got a bit more shadowy away from the center, have found their way back to the center. I always think of that soul light as a sort of an amazing magnetic light. It's not, there's no magnetism in it whatsoever, but that sort of, it attracts itself. You're being called into wholeness at all times. So sleep, walking, meditation, nurturing yourself, really, that's all I'm saying. Nurturing yourself so that you can move into that space when we are in our real, just functional way of being. Then the energy system kind of, it can almost look like it's working on clockwork, or it's walking through a tunnel. Everything's kind of, it's in its place, but that big creative energy field isn't at play. Ideally, as much as we can, we move ourselves back into the creative field, so that actually from that place, suddenly all of this unfolding and enfolding begins to occur again. And as that occurs, it's like we do an amazing spring cleaning on ourselves. Patterns that have been moving towards blockedness begin to release and find their way into balance again. Places where there'd been depletion in your energy fields get reconnected. And in the process of that, those essential energy pieces that have moved away from the center of the core, just find their way back. So it's a very, very simple process, very simple. Your energy system knows how to move in wholeness, but it takes space. That's the massive massive place. So then the question is, what brings space into your day? Is it something that you have to put in your calendar? You know, I've certainly gone through periods where life has been so busy that I'll block in, 40 minutes, stop work, go outside, sit in the garden, do nothing, think nothing. So it's about kind of finding those ways. For some people, you'll be amazing at making sure that your life has that kind of space. But for many of us in modern life, it's a real challenge. And that begins to mean that these little shadow aspects of the core that aren't being fully housed, they hold a little bit of magnetism too. And so actually, you get that shock and everything contracts, and a little bit more of that essence moves away from the center. So yeah, it can certainly be that we're operating with far less than our fullness and our capacity. We all know those times. It's that the capacity to experience the beauty of life just gets less and less and less, because it's like we aren't fully housed at that place. And yet we're not, it's not like we're in an amazing meditation or journey of communication and we're not housed because we're actively engaged in another level of consciousness. It's just that we've lost the ability to connect into that consciousness.
Yeah. Something that, a question that came to mind was, for people who don't have the ability to be able to see, when they might have had this experience of having parts of them, of their essence, not being fully housed. You've mentioned a few things, but I'm just wondering if you have anything more to say around how you might know. Like what would be some clues that would let you know that you're not operating with the fullness of who you are?
It's kind of tricky, that one, because when we are in that place of being less whole, our ability to identify it, notice it, ask the questions of ourselves gets smaller and smaller. So we'd notice it because we feel separate from ourselves in some way. Oh, I haven't, you see someone laughing, a belly laugh, and you recognize, oh, I haven't laughed like that for ages. Or in my case, it's when I hear someone singing or humming, and I think, oh, I don't feel like I've hummed for a while. And I sing, hum, or whistle every hour I'm not talking, pretty much. So this place of movement, it's about what for you expresses your soul. Is it dance? Is it singing? Is it being in great conversation? Is it laughing? Is it just that sheer joy of cooking? Is it lying under a tree and letting yourself sink into the earth? What is it that is the fullest expression of yourself that you engage in? And when did you last do that? That's a really great way to kind of have almost that gauge of how full am I right now? And not full of stress or full of overwhelm or things that you need to do, but how close am I to feeling, wow, this is me? And if the answer isn't as full as I've ever been, then there's more that you can do to really nurture that in. And anticipating your next question, Sarah, some of the things you can do, some of the really simple, and this is why I love understanding energy and having a big toolkit of energy exercises that I can really call on. And there's hundreds of them on my YouTube channel for listeners who maybe want to go and explore what works for you. But for me, one of the most powerful is just to pop my fingers into my armpits, thumbs on the chest, crossing over that area of the heart, and taking time from there to really take my awareness into the body. Ask the question, how am I really? And answer it in the most authentic and honest way. How am I? So when I've been doing that recently, it's really interesting. I've come in and I think, well, how am I? And the answer is massive and wonderful and fully charged. And it's that physically I'm still recovering, and that actually my body is catching up to its full strength, its full stamina. So it doesn't have to be that the answer to how you are is 1. I'm fine. I'm on a scale of 0 to 10. I'm 7. Like sometimes it's great to get curious about, how am I in my physicality, but how am I in my soul? How am I in that deep level of myself? And of course, it could be that, yeah, I'm kind of 9 out of 10 physically. It's great. But oh my goodness, when I ask how I am in my dreaming? How am I in my ability to see the beauty, to experience that mysterious that you spoke of in that beautiful Einstein quote? Do I believe that miracles are all around me? Am I a living miracle? If the answer to all of those is, oh my goodness, Prune, what on earth are you on about? Then actually there's more of the soul expression that can come in. Yeah, I hope that's.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like this consideration of checking in with ourselves, both in the physical level, which is something I think probably a lot of us are used to doing on some level, but then also checking in on a soul level. How are you doing on a soul level? And I'm realizing for myself anyway, that that's not something I routinely check in on. And what a missed opportunity.
Yeah. You know, I do it every single night. I do it regularly, but every night when I'm in bed, as I move towards that beautiful place, just before you enter that liminal space between wake and sleep. So, you know, for me, that's a pretty big space, but just before I get there, I'll just, how am I doing? And I ask those questions and I feel into the energy of how I am in that totality. And what almost always comes from it, maybe always, I'm not sure, is gratitude. And then I'll just be in that energy of gratitude, thanking myself for existing, for showing up, for caring, for the ability to be here, the ability to be alive. Wow, mind-blowing. And then thank you for other things in the day. Gratitude, when we connect into that soul energy, gratitude is an energy that comes from deep within there. It kind of comes back to that place of the cosmic bear hugging and bringing you in. You know, there's such beauty, such grace. I think that was a really strong word. It's a word I'm still playing with as what does it really mean to hold grace? To hold graciousness, to experience grace, to be gracious. We use, it's an old word, isn't it? It's a really old word. And we use it, but I think I can certainly say I have used it in its lesser capacity rather than in this immense capacity that it has.
Wow. Prune, returning to your recent experience, I'm wondering if there are things that you experienced or insights that you might have had of being in that immensity that surprised you, or anything that you kind of learned from that experience, or I don't know if learned is the right word, but you know, if there's any kind of insight that you had that sort of is helping to evolve the way that you think about a soul or our experience here.
I think for me, it was really, as I have thought into it and tuned into it and experienced it since then, like I said, like that place of cosmic consciousness or super consciousness, lots and lots of words for it. It's not It's not one of individual thought. So as I've thought from all places of my being since then, I think that there's a couple of understandings, and it's deeply personal. And this comes back to that place of illness as initiation, as transformation. I think my capacity for love is magnified many, many, many times. And I think I was a very loving person anyway, but it's being in that place for so many days. I feel like so much information was shared between my individual energy field and that cosmic energy field, that actually it may be good for you to ask me that question in many, many years' time, because I feel like there's threads of information that now I have access to that can come forward in my being, my life, my work, that I didn't have access to before. I would say that my vibration, my own energy field is very changed because of that experience. And that's beautiful. And I think one of the most amazing kind of physical aspects of it, one that as this kind of human body walking around, talking with you, eating food, that I just find really amazing is the place that how I came back. That's for me one of the most amazing things, was how I came back, because it was so I'm out there, I'm in that amazing immensity. Some part of me is still held in the body because I'm still able to communicate the few times a day when a nurse or a doctor comes in. And then suddenly I am flying back to my body. And remember I said when I was in Dublin that hand on the shoulder kind of wham brought me back in. That would have been a millisecond. But I have very clear memory, and physical is like the bridge where that being in that place of immensity in the superconscious and beginning to travel back into my own body, really traveling super fast as I came that distance. I was a very, very long way away from my physical body, and moving through and being aware that I wasn't alone, that there was something to my left, and looking. And remember, I'm shamanically trained. I travel a lot, but this was very different. And looking and seeing beside me another energy. And this other energy actually being someone who I do not know, I've never met, and I probably will never meet in the physical. And this energy accompanying me until I was close enough that I could see the hospital bed, see my body in it, and come back in much more fully. And that energy remained present in the room. So as I was accommodating and integrating that big change of the soul energy coming back into the physical body, I got to the place where I was curious, what is this energy? Who is this energy? It was a who, not a what. Like, who is this energy? And seeing very clearly a physical form there, another soul that was journeying actively, consciously, not outside his body because of extreme illness, but someone who was working shamanically. And he explained that he he called himself a skywalker, and that very often he's moving in those outer edges of the immensity. And he'd seen a human form there, known I was in the wrong place, and helped me come back to my body. Now, even as I say that, I get goosebumps. Because we are continually affected by other people that we don't even know exist. And I think for me, that was the most clear example. Astonishing that someone on another continent, working in that energetic, sacred, spiritual realm, identified an energy, I was an energy, out of place, and helped return some of the balance by making sure me as an energetic being was returned to the right place. He wouldn't have known who I was, where that right place was, but being able to work at that level within the sacred to bring healing, to bring balance. And it really connected me and made me very, very aware of the fact that there are people continually working at that level, supporting all of us, every being alive, supporting our growth, our evolution, our movement into greater consciousness, so that we can bring more and more balance into everything about us, into all of our environment, all of our political systems, all of our relationships. And that was one of the most astonishing parts of the experience on that really human level.
Wow, Prune. Did you have an awareness before this experience that there are people, and I'm assuming you mean like human people who are physically here, that for some of these people, they've dedicated a portion of their life to doing that kind of work? Was that something you were aware of before?
Yeah, I really was aware of that. I think my first shamanic teacher was and still is an amazing example of that. She taught me very strongly, the work that we do, we will never see the result of. It's not ours to see or know. We work in service for the balance of the whole, and wherever and whatever needs to be worked within that, we can trust that that's where the energy, the intention, the healing is going, but we might never know. We might never see the results of it or know who it influenced or how it influenced them, which is why it's so important that we are always aware of our intention and where we pay attention, because as part of this immense web of life, our actions, our thoughts, our everything, our energy, which houses all of that, influences that web of life, influences every other being within it, sometimes really directly and sometimes in not such a direct way. But if we take as a concept that this amazing and beautiful web of life, I would hope that each of us have an intention that we want to be part of the balance in it. Yeah, we want to be part of healing imbalances, however that gets translated for you. But things like kindness, compassion, care, attention, consideration, not just to humans, but to all beings, then actually those energies will always create more balance, more healing. So yeah, I was very aware of it already, but I think this was one of the things that saved my life. So it becomes very personal then, doesn't it? How would because from that point, from the point of me coming back in, that was the first time a few hours later that my temperature started coming down. All of my vitals began much more to stabilize, because I was housing my body again. Yeah, I was there. I was able to make sure, well, how am I breathing? Oh my goodness, I'm breathing less than 1 second in and less than 1 second out. Okay, I can take consciousness to that. I can begin to work with that. So once we're housed in our physical body, then our consciousness is fully present. And once that's there, we can actively work with our own energy. We can bring in the concept of relaxation, of space. I could begin to work to connect parts of my physicality and my energy system that were very, very disconnected in that illness. So once consciousness is fully housed, and our energy fields are simply fields of consciousness. So once we're fully housed, then actually we have that potential that if we really understand that energy is the foundation of our health, and that means physical health, emotional and mental health, your vitality, your life force, then actually from that place, we understand how important it is that we are as whole and as full as we can be in the physical. So that energetic core is placed in the physical for a very specific reason. We can't separate it, even though we can move away from the intensity of it at single times. We're here to be a complete expression of our fullness, or at least that's what I believe.
Yeah, that's that actually brings me to, well, two questions. One is, did you feel any resistance to feeling that you know, being escorted back into your physical body? Was there any part of your being that just felt some resistance to that, or did it just, was that not part of that experience?
No, I think actually the opposite. I think it was really beautiful. It was really beautiful to be back, like almost in my beloved. You know, it was immense and beautiful being out, but if it was my time to stay out there, I would have died. Mm-hmm. So actually being back in the physical, oh, it was so, and also what I really loved for those couple of weeks after that, as physically I was still very, very weak, was being able to work with the seeing everything through that energetic lens, you know, the kind of matrix that we were talking about, although mine is very colorful, and gradually to see the physical more and more as well. So it's a beautiful time. You know, transition is, for me, I love transition places. I love the liminal spaces between things. It's a place that I know very, very well. And yeah, it was a total joy to be alive. It is a total joy to be alive.
That's really beautiful. Because you mentioned this, that we all, whether we know it or not, have this happening where our soul might travel. So you mentioned dream times as a time when that happens. I'm just wondering if you want to say anything around that, like what would be the purpose of that? And like there must be a reason why we do that.
I love the way your mind goes to reason about that. Goodness. That's flummoxed me. It's not that there's a reason to doing that. It gives us the reason that dreams exist. Like flip it back on itself. So actually, because our soul moves into fullness of cosmic connection, because we are cosmic beings in this amazing, amazing physical human way, because our soul moves into those levels of connection more when we aren't attached to the physical. So when we sleep, when we meditate, when we journey, we're inviting that expression of connection on a bigger level, because it takes quite a lot of consciousness and attention. So when we dream, when we sleep, we're in a whole different level of consciousness, and that level of consciousness is very connective. Yeah, it looks so incredible. You know, I was just watching, our two dogs were lying on the bed yesterday, and one of them was doing the little running, you know how dogs or animals
Yes.
sometimes can really move in their sleep. But before that started, saw that bigness of her energy field just lifting away from it. It didn't go far. The soul doesn't go far to connect when we're in dream place. It stays very much within our energy field. But there's just like a lifting, a slight stretching. That's the right word. There's just a stretching of it as it connects outside the human energy field. Yeah, so she just lifted, and from there it's like the top, she was lying on the bed, obviously the top of her energy field became much more amorphous, much more cloud-like as the connection was coming in. So that's exactly the same for us. I remember when the children were little and I'd go in and check on them when they were asleep. Sometimes it looked like they weren't there at all, because energetically they really weren't. Their little souls were just traveling and connecting, and yeah, absolutely beautiful. Beautiful the way that children can just give themselves to that experience, even in the waking day. So we think that they're daydreaming or they're in an imaginary world, and they really are, because that imaginal part of creation is where we meet the cosmic. And so it's so beautiful when I see children now, even sitting in a schoolroom or walking down the street, and their energy fields are in that place of much more connectiveness with the trees or the winds. There's an amazing energy when our human energy field is listening to the wind. It's like up, it's being moved. The element of air is really in connection with that individual. Or you got me seeing all kinds of things now, Sarah, you know, being on a beach and watching kids on the beach when they're the physical bodies there, but actually they've moved in communication with the sand, with the energy under the sand, with the water. So we move all the time, and kids do it especially because they haven't yet got the kind of the weight of the physical world hasn't been hardwired into them. They haven't learned all of the shoulds and musts, and long may that last for children as well. Really, the place of being able to live in that imaginal, live in the creative. I think as adults we could do much worse than experiencing more of that in our daily life. The other time I see the soul really shift is when we're really engaged with story. And it may be a story that we have the luxury of having someone tell us. Story carries a spirit. Story carries its own form, its own energy. And the way that there's an amazing part of your soul energy that's called the assemblage point. And anytime a story comes in and that story spirit can meet our spirit or our soul, then the assemblage point that kind of sits around here rises to meet the spirit of that story. And so when people are telling stories, but theatre, when people are engaged, rarely television, but I have seen it happen when we get totally entranced or captivated by a story. Nothing scary, like that would never happen with a psychological thriller or something, because actually the energy has gone in, you've moved into fight, flight, freeze, and you're loving the adrenaline in your body system. But when there's an entrancing or an enchanting or a story that captivates us, and I hope everybody knows what I mean by that, but that feeling of like, oh wow, I remember this, or I'm in the story now, or you're touched by the sweetness of something, our soul travels, then it moves out to embrace and meet that sweetness. So yeah, story is an amazing nurturer of the soul. I love it. It's actually reminding me, your Einstein quote is reminding me of the quote, and this might not be exactly right, but if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. And I love that one. I mean, this is a man of science, but also a man of mystic. And it's that understanding that as we move into the imaginal realm, as we move into that place of story, then our soul we're touched by energies, archetypes, cosmic information that is at the root of being human.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I really love that. What I'm sort of it's like kind of working me from the inside out here. But what I love about this is the understanding that our soul can get information, that traveling can be a process of connection, like you mentioned, and gathering information in a way that maybe is harder to do in the physical form. So that's something I'm going to think about more. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, energy, all of energy is information.
Mm.
So we may be familiar with a concept like a chakra, and that chakra is maybe more blue or more red or more yellow. But that's just because the information coded in that energy system is slightly different than the information coded in another energy system. So all of vibration is information, and we are interconnected in every way. Yeah, I love that thought too.
Yeah. So Prune, I just want to give you the opportunity to just think about if there's anything else that you wanted to share about your experience or about this whole theme about into the mystic. I feel like we could spend hours and hours talking about the mysteries. But I just want to give you a chance in case there's anything kind of lingering that you just want to feel more complete with this conversation.
No, I think you're right. There's a lot more to say, but it feels like actually we have danced around and covered a lot of material here. So at the hope that whomever is listening can really begin to digest and integrate this into their own understandings of your life, their life, then actually, no, I think this is a perfect place to stop. And also we've got lots of other threads that we might want to explore in another conversation.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. And also, I just wanted to mention that you brought up a few words that for some people, it might be the first time they've heard it. So for instance, the assemblage point. And so I just wanted to point people to your website as a place where they can go and find, I know that you've written some, at least one blog about the assemblage point, but lots of the other things that we've talked about, if they're new words, maybe you want to say something about that, the kinds of information that's available.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Definitely many blogs on parts of the energetic structure and how they move and affect us in our daily life. But also, and I think this is one of the things we're really working in this conversation series, is to explore concepts and ideas, but how to ground them, how to really make your relationship with your body more and more aware, so that your soul expression can be fuller. And for me, so much of that comes through understanding energy. So remembering on my website, which is pruneharris.com, there is a lot of information on different parts of your energy systems, what they mean, how they inform your daily life. And then on the YouTube channel, lots of videos for you to be exploring which energy exercises bring you home, which energy exercises really help you align with yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Prune. I really loved this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Sarah, for hosting and holding it so well. And yes, look forward to the next one.
Yes, me too.
Bye-bye.